Hello and welcome to our July Procurement Talk. This is an event series that we started about 2 years ago with our fabulous sponsors in an effort to help collaborate and bring the procurement community together. People in procurement are doing incredible, awesome things, and we want to make the world know all the coolness that's happening and also help people collaborate and share ideas. And sometimes it's learning through stories and hearing maybe some of the mistakes and challenges that we've had so we can help our colleagues and peers. So with that, I want to welcome and thank everybody for being with us today. My name is Sarah Scudder. I run marketing for Real Sourcing Network. We help companies be more sustainable in the print and packaging space. So lots of cool, fun things happening in procurement and supply chain and sustainability, and we're excited to be a part of that. I want to do a big thank you to our 4 sponsors. They make this series possible, allow us to host this every single month without a charge to anyone. And so that's a really incredible benefit. I want to have each of them introduce themselves and tell us something cool, unique, or innovative that they're working on. So Gabby, I'm going to go ahead and start with you and the Jagger team.
Thanks so much, Sarah. We are excited to be here as we are every month. For those of you who are not familiar with Jagger, we're a full S2P suite provider. We've been around for 25 years under a couple different names beforehand. We're a merger of several companies. And most exciting that we have going on right now, last month we ran an autonomous procurement webinar series. And to close that out, we have released an ebook. This is sort of a compilation of all of the best practices, tips and tricks from our speakers across the month. So that's available now, and we're really excited about that piece of thought leadership, not pitching the products at all, just trying to offer some great advice to people who want to start using some more of those autonomous procurement technologies.
Awesome, Gabby. Thanks so much for being here and really looking forward to our conversation today. We've got quite a lively panel lined up. Next, we have Eric joining us from East Coast. You guys have had some warm weather and now lots of rain.
Yeah, unfortunately, kind of humid and a little better today, but thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Evans. I manage partnerships and alliances at Rapid Ratings. And if you don't know us, we're a SaaS-based system enabling financial health transparency and predictive insights between procurement, supply chain managers. And we provide those insights on public and private companies from a financial health perspective. Something innovative, we've been really busy growing our FHR network, where clients can invite suppliers in to self-rate and share their financial health rating. So they can do it once and share it with many. So that's been very interesting to see take off. So enjoy today's panel. Thank you.
All right, Eric, thanks for being with us. Cody, pleasure to have you and the worldwide team. Introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your company and something unique that you and the team are working on.
All right, well, thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be here. I'm with Worldwide Services. So we provide service and maintenance for IT networks, storage, servers, and we really just help when your equipment gets kind of outdated, just making sure that stays in your network and there's no need to upgrade or get new equipment. So it's something innovative we're working on right now. I'd say we've been forming a lot of really good partnerships throughout the IT industry. And, here soon with the IT industry changing so fast and it's always moving at rapid speed, we're going to be able to really help people service any part of their IT network. And they're always going to be up to date and up to speed.
All right, Cody, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And our final sponsor, we've got Manish with us, who looks like he's actually in a real office today.
I am. And we are also moving out. So I don't know if you guys can see, but it's just all empty. Nothing is left. We are moving into our own space. So we are super excited about building our own office space. Good afternoon, good morning, good day is the easier thing to say now. Manish Center, Managing Director for TechWisen Group based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We are workforce solution provider and statement of work on the IT service side of the business. I started participating on procurement events to learn how procurement people really think, how they procure, what challenges. And the most important thing is also to see how we don't just pitch, but how we really collaborate with them once we get to know their pain points. So thank you for, just sharing your knowledge with the rest of the crew here. And most importantly, thank you to Sarah for putting this together, even in COVID. Really look forward to face-to-face, because I have to say, I'm Zoom burnt out. So I'm looking forward to face-to-face.
Manish, thank you for being with us, and congrats on the move. Moving is one of the things I hate the most, but once you're in the new space, I think you'll love it. So we are going to kick off our panel discussion today, which is why we're all here. Before I introduce Jessica, who is going to moderate the discussion, a couple housekeeping notes. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a chat function. So feel free to say hello, put notes, comments, engage, and interact throughout. We'll be, the panelists and I will be checking and monitoring that. We also have a Q&A function at the bottom. So if you have a question for a specific panelist, go ahead and put their name and the question, or if you have a general question, put it in there as well. And Jessica will be managing those throughout as the question comes in. We do encourage questions and engagement. We want this to be as meaningful and valuable for you. So if you have a specific story or a more detail something that you want help with, do not be shy. And I see we have Anna McGovern here kicking off our chat discussion. So Anna, thank you so much for being here. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jessica, who is our moderator. So her and I actually connected, gosh, I want to say maybe over a year ago. She has a really, really strong procurement background, has been a procurement leader for many years. And then she decided to take the big entrepreneurship leap and started her very own company, which she'll tell us a little bit about what she's doing to help procurement leaders avoid burnout and stress. And a couple fun facts that I wanted to share about Jessica. She is still friends with most of the suppliers that she negotiated with, which says a lot about her and her personality. She loves to sing karaoke. So I'm hoping that we will get a little presentation today. Jocelina is also a karaoke singer who's on the panel, so we may be in for a treat today. And then Jessica moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, without ever having been there. So with that, Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, everybody. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you so much. What an amazing topic we have today. And my fellow brothers and sisters in procurement, it ain't always easy, right? I mean, we're going to have a really, really, really good, honest conversation, because we've already talked about how this is not, other than for karaoke, we are not performing today. We're having an authentic discussion on why it's important to connect with the people we do business with. Sarah was one of those people for me. I am so excited to bring all of that to this discussion and help you guys shine and talk about how, procurement and negotiations and things that we have to do in our work sometimes has stress tied to it. And this is one of those opportunities where we can talk about it openly and give each other tools on, there are things that bring up emotions in us, and that's healthy. That's like the pulse check to remind ourselves that we're human, which matters in having a good, strong business ethic, having a great work ethic. All of this stuff takes energy. So Sarah is, a longtime sister of mine now, it feels like, in the entrepreneur world. There is no greater relationship that I have now with my own energy than the way that I have that relationship now as an entrepreneur, as an employer for others. And also talking about how important it is to do that with our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are human. And that is so important, to be able to connect and get those results that we all want. We might talk about them differently. We might use different words to describe what it is that we want, but there's no better group in any company, I believe, than a procurement organization to pull out what is it that we really, really, really want. And then we go create it. So so glad to be here with all of you. Hey to everybody in the audience. We're going to have a really great conversation today. So quick introduction about me. I'm Jessica Walther. I'm the CEO and founder of Innovate. We are a people first, not last consulting company. We help build processes that help businesses scale, and we get people ready for negotiations in order to help them do that. We also have a deep, deep personal connection to burnout prevention in the workplace. So there is no place for stress. If you want to get results, you can exist with the stress, but you also have to know how to process it. And again, no better group than a procurement organization to know how to process some stuff and to get to the other side of that stress and create amazing things. So I am so glad to be here with all of you. Jaslina, Pravi, Shri, Justin, thank you for being here. I am so excited to hear from all of your beautiful experiences in finding that connection with the human. As we already said, that's so important to anything being beautiful in the end, is connecting with the human on the other side of the table, in the process, whatever it is. So I would like to first invite Shri just to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and then we'll just keep going around the room.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name is Shri, and I'm the procurement sourcing manager for a company called Automation Anywhere here in the West Coast. I manage all the purchases for the CTO organization and the CIO, and that involves, contract review, price negotiations, and making sure you have a great supplier relationship management with your suppliers.
Thank you. And Jaslina.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Jocelyn, I'm based in New Jersey. I actually represent several organizations. So I'm with over 20 years of experience in both procurement and supply chain. In the organization that I'm actually looking to highlight today, which is a very cool project that we're just launching, which is called Sora's Cradle. I'm an executive board member. And actually, it's just really zooming in on diversity and inclusion. So we're focusing on helping mothers to restore, redeem, and thrive, and to actually make that experience that all new mothers, expectant mothers, to be equal, right? So holistic experience. So this is actually quite a passion project that the founders, Shamika Whiteside and others actually brought to life. And I'm so proud to be a part of it. And of course, through procurement and supply chain, advising us to make that operation to be sustainable and efficient. So looking forward to be amongst the panelists and of course to make this as interactive as possible conversation. So thank you, Jessica, and to the amazing panel that I have the opportunity to share, time and air with.
Oh, there I am on mute. All right. Thank you, Jaslina. Pravi, what do we want to know about you?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this talk with the panelists, amazing group of panelists. So just a little bit about my background, kind of a bit like just, my friend Jocelina, that I've been in the industry for a while, almost 20 years of experience, almost 20, not quite exactly as much as hers just yet. But I've been a global procurement officer. I'm a board advisor at the sourcing industry group and Ramp Rate. And then I have a day job where I actually lead the technology and engineering sourcing practice at Albertsons Companies. And I'm a big champion in terms of pushing procurement envelope in a different manner, right? My whole MO has been all about transformation, doing things for the first time, doing something new, and doing something that others actually don't want to do or too scared to do. So I'm happy to be here and share some stories and battle scars with the panelists.
Yes, stories and battle scars, the things that bring us together and keep us together. I love it. Justin, welcome. What do we need to know about you?
Thanks. Good morning. It's exciting to be here and talk with this group. I think we've got a lot of good topics lined up for today. My current role is as the system-wide executive director of strategic sourcing for the University of California system. And I've spent about half of my career in procurement and account management, procurement software account management, and half of it in higher education. And the topic that we're going to talk about today in engaging with stakeholders and working with people to build trust has really made the difference in just about every role that I've been in. And so just really excited to engage and hear some new ideas on that topic today. And then, in the run-up, you may have heard that I was a shoe collector. So I just wanted to share my latest addition to my shoe collection. Need a new pair of running shoes. I brought these home. My wife said, I'll be able to see those. I could see those. So looking forward to the discussion.
We'll see you coming from a mile away. I love it. I love it. All right, guys. So we obviously have a few things that we want to talk about, but I really want to emphasize that we want this to be an interactive discussion. And that includes all of you in the chat. We want to hear your questions. Use this opportunity to brainstorm with us. Bring up the thing that's on your mind that kept you up last night or has been maybe keeping you up for several nights. That's the purpose of this. We're here to talk about the reality of working with large groups of people, or maybe there's one person in particular at work that is just kind of like giving you a little bit of a run for your money right now. So let's make this honest. There is nothing more that we need than honesty right now in this world, right? So Shri, I want to start with you because I know that you have a lot of insights and beliefs around what it takes to the art of getting a seat at the table. I know that we can all relate to what it's like to be like, hey, I'm for procurement and I'm here to help.
Yeah.
And the first thing everybody says is, well, great. What do you know about my business? And we're like, well, lots of things, but let's have a conversation first. How do you start that? How do you get everybody sitting at the same table and starting to problem solve, solution find? Where do you like to start?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So I've been a software engineer for 6.5 years before I decided to pursue my master's in supply chain and then come to procurement and sourcing. So as an engineer, the first thing that you ask is, can I solve this problem by myself, or do I need to go to somebody else? The first thing you think is, can I fix it myself? Only then you ask for another person, right? So I kind of get the mindset. When I started this organization, the organization did not have a procurement and sourcing folks. So what they would do is they'd go buy stuff themselves, not sure about risk mitigation, not sure about what else are they getting for the right price and things like that. So when I came in and I said, hey, can I connect with you guys? Reached out to a few managers and said, I'm new at the team. Can we connect? I never got time. They said they're really busy. Can we meet 2 weeks after? So as a sourcing person, I decided that, you have to enterprise for yourself and also enterprise for your team. So the first thing I started was, hey, can I help with something? And then they said, okay, you know what, can you check if the supplier has been paid? That's the first thing they asked me to do, though. So I was like, okay, it's okay. Let me try to get some friends. I need that. So I said, yes, I will go and check that for you. And then there was somebody who needed an extra few licenses for, some Jira software because they had increased their team size. So I said, okay, you know what, I can do that for you, though it's not a lot of value, but I'm happy to. So after that, and I got some renewals. After getting some renewals, and then the third was a renegotiation of a contract, which is where we were able to save some really good amount of money, $350,000. And then also we had risk mitigation. And how I did that was the multi-year agreement, but I negotiated with a supplier to get 2-year agreement with an option to opt out at the end of year 1. So that was a good deal for us because we were not sure if we want to continue with the supplier. So after that, I realized that one of my senior managers invited me to meet with the CTO of the organization to see, hey, you know what, there's somebody in the procurement who can help us. So what I learned from that experience is more than you being able to enterprise for yourself, if somebody else can enterprise for you, who is one among the team, then there's nothing like it, So I had that senior manager be my spokesman, introduce me and invite me a seat at the table, So that's what helped move the coins for me. So I'd say that, more than yourself, you had good people who can enterprise. That's the game changer for me.
Totally. And what I heard so loud and clear is the power of listening, asking questions, getting that connection, actually hearing where the value can be delivered. Sometimes when we get so caught up in our own objectives as sourcing professionals, we can forget about the fact that the keys to that success rely with our stakeholders. We create it together because naturally from that causes the connection, the natural enterprising, as you call it, throughout the organization on what it felt like to work with Shri. And then the momentum builds. So I love that. I love that. Who else has something to add to that?
If I can just jump in, Jessica, just building from Shri's point, it's definitely, you know, a little bit of it's working from the customer experience, right? So your internal stakeholders is really your customers. And if we actually look at the evolution of procurement, right? So it's been really underestimated for so many years because, I mean, for the most part, everybody does a bit of a negotiation in their daily lives, right? So if we look at it simplistically, everybody, one way or the other, they have to purchase a car, they have to purchase a house, they actually have to do daily transactions. So it's a common thinking that everybody can negotiate. And for the most part, they can, right? And it's always assumed in an organization that why do I really need a procurement professional, right? So, and there's a lot of run around. I think over my 20 years, I can probably swap stories about different industries, right? So from fast consumer goods to pharmaceuticals to oil and gas, and it's essentially the same common denominator. So I think to get a seat at the table, you really have to put your consulting hat in. And to the earlier point that Shri was actually saying is balancing that inquiry, right? More inquiry than advocating, right? So, and it's a little bit of that show and tell. So what is it that is happening with your spend? What are the potential opportunities? So you really have to do a little bit of a show and tell to actually gain their interest, to gain some momentum, to gain actually collaboration, and to really gain their trust that, you know what, if actually we work together and I maybe bring an expert, so somebody who may be able to know the market, to profile the market, to actually identify who are the right players, who can build those relationships and bring value, then I can focus maybe on doing other things with the business, right? So if you're an engineer, so you can actually build things, right? So create things. If you're in R&D, you can actually then create chemistry for the future. If you are in another function, so you can focus on what you're there to do. And then you can leave the procurement professional to actually bring value to that spend that you really need to get, you know, more money, maximize that return, right? In that investment. So I think there has been a shift, and now we're being seen as, okay, like you go for your bank, right? So for somebody to actually run your investment portfolio, now we're actually being seen as a person that can help you to really more strategically manage how you spend the money, right? So that, to me, I think COVID, quite honestly, did us a great help in the sense that now really there was a lot of focusing in procurement and supply chain, because we all lived, right? So through it, how difficult it is if there's a disruption in your whole value chain from where you're sourcing, who you're sourcing, and so on and so forth. But zooming in, and I know I said a lot, it's really a little bit of a show and tell. To be what you guys said, I echo, is active listening, is empathy, is actually trying to inquire as much as you can. And you have to really generate some value quickly, right? So to kind of show them with your consultant hat on, so then that you can actually get a little bit of runway and leeway to actually start helping them to help you.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, one thing I want to highlight what you said, the show and tell. And the power of the show and tell comes from when you actually believe what you're showing and telling. Yeah. Where does that energy come from, right? It comes from inside. It's not the metric that you're already worried about hitting. It's about, what do I believe about this project? What do I believe that we can create together? And then through our intellect and all the tools that we and our stakeholders have available to us, we put those together and magic things happen, right? So how do we not burn ourselves out trying to be on all the time in some sort of fake way? How do we speak our truth, know what works because we know ourselves well enough, and then we go do the thing together? That's where the power resides. So who wants to respond to that, or what Shri was saying before?
I can give a perspective, Jessica, right? So having been a CPO and having kind of gone through the entire gamut, right? There are two things that I've picked up over my career is one idea about value add, right? Value add is an incredible, paramount item that I think many procurement professionals in the past forgot about, right? And what is that value add, right? That value add is really driven by how your stakeholder sees it, right? It's not how you may want to drive compliance or how you may want to drive metrics, but rather where's that value add for each stakeholder? It's a little bit different, right? So I think that's one piece of it. The other piece, that kind of piggybacking off of Jocelina's comment, right? Everybody knows how to negotiate. Some are really great negotiators. Some are not so great negotiators. But at the end of the day, there's not a person out there that's not going to think they know how to negotiate something, right? So I think you have to really demonstrate that you have a better level of expertise, right? That you bring something to the table that they really don't know or have. And it's not because they didn't look at it, it's just not their core area of expertise, right? So you have to, and it ties back to the value statement. It's when you're able to kind of demonstrate those combination of two together, that's when the stakeholder says, oh, aha, right? And they want you. They in fact drag you along on stuff you don't even want to be involved in, right? But that's where you built that trust, right? I have to like literally tell my stakeholders, I think you can handle this yourself. You got this, So I think my perspective has always been, I want to teach my stakeholders how to fish better, because I will never have resources and manpower and funding to have an umpire, and I'm not in it to build an umpire, right? And I think when we keep those things in check, it's very important, right? Make sure we have right skills, we have the right processes, we have the right technologies to automate. And I think if we do that, we're adding tremendous value, not only to our stakeholders, but also to the organization.
I really like where Purvi stopped on trust there, because I think that's really where everything begins. I think when we come into interactions with our stakeholders, a lot of times they have a preformed opinion. Procurement has a brand in their mind, and a lot of times they think that we're not there to serve their interest. We're there because we need to manage compliance. We're there because we need to manage price. And developing the trust to show that your interests are aligned and that you're trying to solve a problem in the supply base and the supply chain together is really the key challenge. Just yesterday on Procurement Foundry, if you follow it, Mike had a post that talked about the oppositionalness that you have in a negotiation with the supplier. But a lot of times you face that same sense of opposition between procurement and the different functions of your organization. Early in my career at the UC, someone showed me an email that they got from a researcher. They received it, and the email said, "Procurement is the speed bump on the way to the Nobel Prize." And I think if you are a function that wants to deliver value and help the mission of your organization, that's you don't want to be the speed bump on the way to anything, right? You want to be someone who, what I talk about in our organization is, hey, procurement's part of the scientific method that can help get you there. So we're going to help you consider things that you haven't been before. But it really all begins with, the trust and the perception that your partners in solving a problem together.
Great. Like I always say to people, I do not want to be the process police. I am not the compliance police. I am a partner. And I think it's so important, right? You can only be a partner if there's a trust involved. And it's fascinating to me that how many procurement leaders don't actually develop that trust. They're more about, I'm a compliance-driven compliance person. And at the end of the day, if you have sound processes that are automated, standardized, guess what? And good technologies, compliance will take care of itself. It's the relationships that's going to drive that partnership and value that everybody sees, right? Then it is a fascinating thing how much we forget, right?
And just to kind of add to what Purvi and also to Justin has said, in reality, we are the connectors, right? So we connect the outside world, which is the marketplace, right? So what's happening with the competition, with the potential sources that are actually out there, what is happening with mergers and acquisitions activities, what is happening with the alternative value disposition, what you're buying for the goods or services, right? So we actually bring the outside market intelligence in, but we also understand what the business challenges, right? So related to the strategy, to the growth, to the segmentation, where are we actually heading, right? So what are the priorities, the key imperatives? And if you think about it, right, so you're really connecting the outside with the inside world and actually trying to make sense of that in a way that you can fund investments, growth, right? So the role of procurement, actually, this is a fun fact, statistically now, we're at the top of the food chain, right? So the chief procurement officers are now being seen as the potential successors of the CEO, right? You look back 20 years, I mean, I hope it doesn't show, right? So I think I look good. But in any case, I mean, when you go back, we were really at the bottom of the food chain when companies were thinking about procurement, right? We were viewed as paper pushers, transactionals, right? So to what Sheree was saying, like, yeah, you can check on the payment status, right? So you can actually follow up on the supplier, right? So we were actually seen as taskmasters rather than, right? So that we could potentially, bring any strategy or any notion that we can actually marry the outside world with the inside world and actually solve for a challenge. But all of that really has changed over the last 10 years. And I think it has been even further accelerated with the pandemic, right? So companies, the government was even looking at procurement, help us, right? So how do we can solve for the supply chain problems with the vaccine? So I do think that if anything, for our peers, right, so our brothers and sisters in procurement, it's the fact that we are the connectors, right? And this is also married to what everybody has said, is the key really role, the collaboration and the partnership, and how do we connect the outside world in with the inside world?
100%. And what I really want to highlight there is the shift that needed to happen inside of all of us as procurement leaders to believe first that we're not just paper pushers. We're not the roadblock. We are the accelerator. And then from that, we get the status as the successor, right? We created that, but we had to stop listening and then feeding into all these old terms that were used to describe us. And I'm like, well, that's not what we do every day. So why do we act like it? So very, very important. And one thing I want to say is, I'm looking in the chat and Susan is talking again about trust and the importance of that. The one thing that I hope we all walk away with, no matter what project we're working on right now, do not seek trust while also having the mindset of fearing rejection from that person, because you will push it away. You will not create the connection you are seeking. You will feed the old paper pusher belief system that you were born with when you decided to take supply chain as your career path. Now, we are all human. We have amazing talents. It's our job to use them. If you want to connect with people, then put yourself out there to be connected with. Maria, I love what you're saying about, we're not compliance police. God, could we be more boring if we were out there advertising that we're the compliance police? No, we listen, we see the gaps, we see the risk that is inherent by us not as an organization seeing the compliance. We want to have our team members, our stakeholders feel safe in these creative ventures that they're doing, or this new out of the box thinking that is going to be the next best idea that shoots the company to its goals. There are things that structurally can be in place to support that. Now, we all love a good brainstorming session, me especially, and we can work together on turning that brainstorming session into something that's real, that's marketable, is profitable, is contractually safe. Everybody gets what they want when you work with procurement, period, end of sentence. That's how it works, if done well. So Maria, thank you for that. Justin, I want to talk to you a little bit because you're in a slightly different industry than the rest of the panel. And I think it's really important because your internal selling strategy is very different than perhaps those of us that came from more the traditional corporate sector. So I want to hear, how are you getting this, this value creation opportunity? How are you keeping it fresh? How are you doing that in your environment of the educational system?
Yeah, that's a question that we wake up thinking about every day. In some ways, we have to help our organization understand, and our suppliers, frankly, understand the importance of procurement and supply chain to our mission, which is teaching, research, and public service. We want to grow, new leaders, new knowledge, and we want to, serve the people of California. But only 10% of our funding comes from the state. We're not really a state agency. So just like any company, it's important that we manage our costs, because that helps us keep tuition low and welcome in more students from more backgrounds so that they can learn and elevate themselves through education. So fundamentally, procurement supply chain is still important in higher education. I had a little bit of a flashback, when you said that in the beginning that the we're for procurement, we're here to help. And the how that's greeted in an organization. In my role, I add on to that layer. I am from corporate, I am from procurement, and I am here to help. And so, all of those comments about trust really come to fore. But the things that we really do, I think, that engage our community are, one, we help it to connect to each other. So we have 10 campuses spread north to south across California. They tend to be very strong communities in their own right, people who like to collaborate with each other. Everybody's interested in also what's happening. People at UCLA are interested in what's happening at UC Berkeley. And part of the value that we can provide is to be a forum that connects them to each other, helps them get out and see what business issues that they have in common, and help them collaborate to come up with a solution and how they work with suppliers and the supply chain to help each other. I think the other thing that we're constantly doing is we're translating dollars, we're converting dollars into derivatives, where dollars are important, but they don't drive the incentives of the university like they do inside of a company. So what's important is, with your funding, what you have, your dollars, what you can accomplish with that funding. So if by working together across campuses, we might be able to take a food category and be able to leverage our volume so that instead of buying it from a large national supplier, we might be able to buy it from a more local, more organic source, and to change the scale so that we can do something that is more in line with our values. It really becomes a challenge of finding the things that motivate our community. Sometimes that can be things like environmental sustainability. People want to come and look at solutions. So we had a program where we worked with a lighting research center that's part of UC Davis. And we worked with the supply base to basically source the next generation of LED bulbs, bulbs that give off a higher quality of light at a higher efficiency, and make them a standard within the UC. So it's finding the sort of the programmatic elements that match up with the dollars and get people excited and want to work with you, that I really look to.
Absolutely. And this is a perfect segue into a topic that you just touched on, Justin. And that is the delicate balance that we always have to keep between operational, doing the things that we know, and rethinking the strategy. So you're talking about where does the money need to go so we can keep that cycle going? And Jocelyn, I want to ask you that question. How do you intentionally, purposefully keep that shift, that balance happening between operational and strategic thinking, that kind of out of the box thinking that's going to take you to the next level? How do you get stakeholders to buy into that?
No, thank you, Jessica. I mean, as similar to Purvi, right? So as a chief procurement officer, so you do really have to keep that top of mind, right? Because you want to actually keep, line of sight of what is actually in the future, right? So, and that's the strategy and how do we reimagine, but at the same time, you really want to establish the foundation with the organization and also with the stakeholders. So then they can actively manage the short to medium term, right? So they understand where the business is going. So then they know what kind of a value their categories that they're actually managing can bring to those individual business units. And how do we do that? So in my experience, there's two things that I believe that has helped us to be successful in actually managing the strategic with the operational. And I will explain in a little bit. So we partner with the communications organization within the company. I think it's very powerful when procurement actually does purposely reach out back to the organization in terms of what we're doing and how we aligning with the strategy delivery of the company, right? So in how procurement actually is helping either to fund the growth, right? So when we're actually doing enablements, investments in digitization, right? And all of this is being funded through procurement. I think it's important to highlight that back to the whole company so then they know what's going on, what procurement is cooking. And you can actually do it in a fun, kind of lightweight, engaging way, but at the same time, you're kind of hitting all the different aspects of the company strategy and how that is actually being delivered through procurement. So that's one aspect on how you keep that, kind of a focus on the strategy. At the same time, right? So for the operational things that you have budgeted, things that they were actually deemed priority by the business units, right? So we do have stakeholders governance reviews on a quarterly basis. And we actually look at how the progression of all those key projects, right? So that we have by BUs is happening. And then we actually report that on a quarterly basis through those publications. So then people get excited. And we also take the opportunity, quite honestly, to celebrate not only what procurement is doing, but also what it's doing in partnership with the stakeholders. And the other opportunity there is also how do we then bring it all together by highlighting the collaboration and the value that the suppliers are bringing to the delivery of those projects, right? So in the short term, so what is actually making, like I said, keeping the machinery oiled, right? So what is actually keeping the business going, but at the same time, what are the key projects that we're actually doing that then is excited because it's actually going to be forward, about the future, right? So leveraging Industry 4.0, what actually we're doing so then we can get more spend analytics, that we're getting, better quality data, that we can actually get, faster response, that we can actually be more agile. So by keeping those two aspects of the communication on a regular basis and putting it, quite honestly, in the nose, right? So kind of putting it back to the people in the business, being bold with it, quite honestly, and being proud, right? So that we're almost like we all want to wear a t-shirt, like we're procurement and we're here and we're actually bringing bold value, right? So you really want to be, preaching that, not in a overwhelming kind of a way, but in a way that, yeah, this is what we're delivering back to you. And guess what? We're proud that we're doing that. So that's a little bit what I've done with my organization. And quite honestly, I think it's working, and we see in it that we're keeping both ends excited, right? So the short term, medium term, but also, people are now more informed as to what is it that we're doing as a company strategically and how we procurement are actually funding that growth.
Absolutely. And I love how you highlighted too, that suppliers are part of that success equation. They are not the enemy. We're not always trying to win the contract so that they can lose it. This is a collaboration. And sometimes I feel like, especially those that are just entering the procurement space, they automatically start to hear these war stories of negotiations gone wrong. And what do we instill in those people? We instill fear, we instill distrust. We actually create the very thing that we started out this conversation saying that is so important, and that is trust. So, I am very proud of the relationships and now the friendships that have turned into clients for me and my team now, because I treated those suppliers with respect. And by doing that, and by actually letting them be the experts in their field, we didn't just save 5%, we saved 30, 40%, and had something to market and share throughout the organization of, look what we did together. And that creates energy that everybody gets excited about. And I love that you brought that up, because I think it's an important topic that's often missed, that suppliers are a part of the magic that we create in the workplace. So Pravi, I feel like you have something to share on this. What do you have to talk about on it?
I think, no, I completely agree with you, right? I would say my stakeholders are my big supporter, but my suppliers are my biggest supporter, right? And part of it is, right, I'm in it because I want to make them successful. If they're successful, we're successful, right? And I think one of the things that I found, and I think this is where the maturity of procurement as an organization and as it evolves, I think that the whole mindset of costs, right, the budget management, a lot of that comes from it's sort of getting pushed in under finance, right? And when it's under finance, it's very black and white. And from my point of view, I'm like, listen, I'm not black and white. I'm a strategist. I'd rather have a P&L ownership on procurement, right? Versus just being a support function. And I think so what's happened is we've had a generation of leaders that have been brought up just and trained just to think about the dollars. It's right. And I love my finance stakeholders, don't get me wrong, but they always leave, dollars on the table to pick up pennies from the floor, right? And I think that's not what procurement is. It's all about strategy. It's about, collaboration with your entire ecosystem, which includes your suppliers, your stakeholders, right? Your internal other support partners. And I think we've got to be able to do that, because if we don't, right, at some point, AI is going to take over a lot of the transactional things that procurement's used to doing, right? So we have to elevate our teams to think about it differently and think about it from a point of view so that we continue to stay relevant, right? And adding value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who else has something to share on this?
I want to say that, sometimes when I talk to suppliers, I tell them, and I really like them, and I see that they're working with us, and they're able to say that, hey, we're partners, we're not trying to milk you guys. I always tell them, hey, I'm going to be your internal salesman. I'm going to talk for you in the organization. I'm not going to go and say, okay, I'm sure we can knock this guy off for 40%, right? We need to make sure that you understand that, and then you build trust in them like you build trust in your stakeholders. So I always use that tag, I'm going to be your internal salesperson. Just tell me, what things will work and how we can better at this relationship, because both of us want to get this contract signed, right? Both of us want the same thing. So how do we make it even better? Sweeten the deal is what I'd like to talk about. So yeah.
But I also would like to echo my colleagues in practice. Also, I have had several experiences when you're also partnering with, say, contract manufacturers, right? Or tollers, or, third-party suppliers. Even during the pandemic, we actually had some of our suppliers experiencing issues as a result of having short staff, right? So at the beginning, early stages of the pandemic, right? So there was a lot of uncertainty, and even with, the preventive measures of actually keeping social distancing, so some organizations actually couldn't keep up with the manpower, right? Even if they had automated process. And one example that I can mention without going too much into details, right? So we offered to actually send them, technical support, people that we had in our organization that they were familiar with the process, to actually help them run. Because guess what? If they were actually able to get throughput in their operations, they were actually able to continue to supply us, right? So when their problem comes, it's not about what can you do for me lately, Mr. Supplier, is that let's put our thinking caps and co-solution that problem. And two things, right? So suppliers are going to remember that not only you were there to lend a helping hand, but that actually opens the relationship to a different level of collaboration, right? Transparency even, and support, and it goes both ways, right? So we're both winning, and we're actually trying to align. The more that we align how we operate and that we understand, right, cohesiveness of processes, the better that we can actually deliver value back. So I, like you and like Pravi and like everybody, Cherie said, there's no business that can exist without suppliers, right? So if we're not right partner with our suppliers, we cannot have business. So without suppliers and customers, there's no business, essentially.
Period. End of sentence. Mic drop. Every facet is needed to be successful. I so agree with you. And you bring up a very important point as well in how everyone's world changed. Every process that was written in 2017, 18, and 19 had to get refreshed in 2020. And I don't know that there's a part of an organization that felt it more than in supply chain and procurement, because everybody's coming to us like, what is happening? Will you fix this for me the way that you waved your magic wand every other time? Like, please do that again, because nothing's working anymore. And again, an opportunity like Shri, you mentioned, adding that value, being there to listen, understand, not just put a piece of paper and with a process on it to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the same thing we did 5 years ago. No, we won't say that because it would fail. And we're smarter than that. But what we will do is say, we're going to get quiet. We're going to assess the current state. What is happening? Where do we want it to go? Future state, right? And then together we build the pieces in between. And that is how we evolve. That's not just how we solve the problem at hand that's making us sick, but it evolves the way that we do business. And that is what is expected of us as leaders in our organization, as owners of businesses. We must continue to reinvent ourselves. Otherwise, we're going to be replaced by AI. And you can't replace connection. You cannot. I have talked with chatbots. I even have one. I still pick up the phone and talk with my clients. It's so important. And that process, that supportive process to our suppliers, when everyone's around saying, my supplier isn't doing what they said that they would do. My supplier is not living up to my expectations. We find the common ground first to be able to bridge that gap rather than make everyone's lives worse by saying, well, we probably need to find a new supplier because this one is no. The next supplier is going to struggle the same way your current one is. So let's get real on what's broken. So who experienced that last year and maybe still coming out of? Any new processes that had to be built to keep that cycle fresh, to keep the innovation fresh?
So I can kind of speak on that, Jessica. I think that what last year did really is making companies revisit what procurement is and is meant to be and should be in the future, right? A lot of companies discovered that procurement processes as they existed for eons were not going to work, right? It's sort of, the company was buckling down and I wasn't here at Albertsons, but I'm just kind of sharing from a lot of other, clients in the market. That's what I learned, right? That they were just saying, what's happening, right? My processes set up are not there. I think a lot of the board members that I've spoken to, right? A lot of their companies, the boards were never looking at procurement before. My God, it was never even on the radar. And all of a sudden the board wanted to talk to who the CPO was, what's happening in the market. My God, where's my supply chain, right? So I think there was a recognition at that point to say, the processes are not working. By the way, they're not automated. Oh, by the way, we put no investments into, the talent, the technologies, the process, or whatever you want to call it. And there was, I almost call it a reckoning happened, unfortunately, last year, right? This is why, to Jocelina's point, why procurement now has a seat at the table, right? We had leadership that were not open to pushing the envelope to get the investments that were necessary to continue to evolve procurement as a function. Now we're in a completely different ballgame. I think that most of the leaders have probably another 18 months to demonstrate that they can evolve. And what does that mean? That evolution doesn't mean, hey, I've got a fancy new tool. No, can you actually get to the next stage of what the business is going to be? And if you can't get there, those leaders will not be around. I mean, that's just the reality. So I see it's the first time in my career, I'm seeing a huge push of procurement evolving for the very first time. And I think it's exciting, quite frankly.
Yes, we're cool to hang out with, you guys. We're cool to hang out with. Go ahead, Justin.
I was going to say, I really agree. And Purvi's point, what we saw over the last 20 months is people really recognizing how connected we were across all of our campuses and within the organization. We saw recognized our ability to spot one part of the organization that needs to be connected to another part of the organization, to be effective. I think something else that, we all sort of had a little bit of a wake up call is we really had a lot of relationships and structures that were focused on having ready access to a broad spectrum of product very quickly, without realizing how delicate that setup is, right? And how really it doesn't take very much to disrupt it. So I think a really, as a procurement organization, we always, talked about risk, and sometimes during a fire season for N95 masks, we would experience a little bit, but here the entire organization had really tangible experience about, what we mean when we're talking about supply risk and how we can work together to mitigate the impact. Setting up internal supply chains so that we could share products across campuses, or working with our suppliers to make sure that things that we needed to provide student health centers were prioritized as going to a medical organization and not an educational one. These are all sort of lessons that we learned on the fly. But and a third one, I think that is a particular important one for us that I hope we're going to take forward, is thinking about the connection of our campuses to the community. During the pandemic, a lot of them flexed their business processes to better serve their community. So UC San Diego, for example, set up one of the first mass vaccination sites and supported their community in that way. At Davis, their supply chain team supported a testing program that was not just for people on campus, it was also for the city of Davis. Anyone could go and get tested. And in our dining organizations, you saw them shift their models from preparing meals for students who were on campus to preparing meals for frontline workers who were working in hospitals or in some of these testing stations. And so, I hope this sense of risk and the, sort of the planning muscle that we began to develop coming out of that, and that real connection to the community is something that we continue to take advantage of.
Yes, you just reminded me of when I went into a Target to get my COVID shot. They repurposed the fitting rooms to be places where you could get, I'm like, oh, that was procurement in some way. That was procurement in some way, figuring that out. Jocelyn, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Justin and Pravi said. In terms of actually one of the key lessons, it was decentralizing, right? So, and also focusing on how we can get contingency. I think through our partner suppliers and also collaborating with the front end of the business, with the customers, right? So on how we could redeploy things slightly different and faster. So for example, strategic stock, right? So as the pandemic was actually hitting different geographics, right? So thankfully not all at once. So it was actually some bottlenecks that we were experiencing, right? So you needed to quickly redeploy geographically, right? And now this is also part of, as we map the supply chains for future contracts, and even, how do we expand with suppliers, it's a different set of conversations now, right? So where are you geographically located, and where do you actually have contingency stock? And by the way, this is an investment that maybe we need to partner up. So conversations are now completely more end to end, I will say, but also at the same time, we not only take it from the upstream, right? So suppliers, our business, and how do we then, translate that into operations and supply chain, but we also wanted to connect it all the way to the customer end, right? And is there any correlation or opportunity to really join that partnership, right? Whether it be, big data, whether it could be actual, putting some investment collectively together. How does that look like even from a legal framework, right? Which maybe didn't exist in those terms. So it's been a lot of opportunity to decentralize, but also to have conversations really at all levels, which it was more kind of a silo and contain it in pockets. So I think it's pretty much open the, if you will, the full table really to explore everything, right? With critical thinking and also with a fresh pair of eyes. How does it really work? The whole enchilada, I will say, 100%, and then take away a little bit of the mystery meat, right? And just kind of figure out how do we put it together, part of my analogy. But really that's what I think has been a huge aha moment that I think everybody in procurement, supply chain, and even the commercial folks has had as a result of this.
No more mystery meat. No more of it. I love it. It's all on the table. We're being honest and transparent about what is in the enchilada. I love it. All right, guys, we are at the top of the hour. So I want to give everybody an opportunity I know you all have amazing ideas on where we go from here. And I would really invite everybody in the audience to do this exercise with us. And something that's very powerful is taking conversations like this, letting yourself receive all of this amazing insight, intuition, all of these new things that you're thinking about now that maybe when you were doing the thing an hour ago, you weren't, but you're in a different headspace. So how do we tap into that? So what I would like to do to sort of spur that creativity that we've spent an hour talking about, where do we go from here? And I would just like to open it up to the panel of anything that has just kind of dropped into your mind of, I need to do more of this. I need to do less of this. I need to think about this differently. What have you taken from the conversation that's going to keep you leveling up in a very healthy, sustainable way for yourself going forward through the rest of the year? What dropped in that you're like, oh, that's what I was missing. That's what I want to do more of. Any inspiration come out?
This guy can kind of share something, right? And Jocelina made a good point, right? It's about communication. I think one of the key things that I've tried to do in my past is really share the wins and the, part of sort of the challenges. And it's something that I continue to reiterate with my team as well, because we've got to be able to communicate, right? And I think the communication aspect of it, our pluses and minuses, right? Where we can be better, where we can improve, where we've had great wins, let's kind of share on that journey. I think that's an important one that I think procurement never really pays as much attention to in the past. We just need to continue doing that. So I think it reiterated for me that we've got to do that, good, bad, and the ugly, right? Without being able to have that ability to have that conversation, we're not going to know where we're going to improve, right? We're not going to know how we can be better partners. We're not going to know how we can add value or the value statement shifting for the business. We're not going to understand that, right? I think that's something I'm going to continue to reiterate and
yes,
keep in the front of my mind instead of back of my mind.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jessie.
No, go ahead, please.
So for me, it's what Jessie said, right? Yeah, knowing what they'd like. Do they like fish, so I can cook fish for them when they come to me? Or do they make them just chicken because they'd like chicken, right? But I also have to make sure, do I have all of what I need? Can I keep my finance happy? Can I make sure that legal gets all their terms in there? LOL is not less than 3x of what the purchase order is, making sure that I'm happy. All the AP, the payment terms, are they in line with what we get? And then still, did we cook a meal that my stakeholder would like? And then would still come back to me more to eat another dinner with me, That's, I think, Josie put it really in a nice way and that's the big takeaway for me from this conversation.
How to be a good host. Always a good life lesson. I love it. Go ahead, Jocelina.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Shri, and thank you, Purvi. No, I honestly, this has been a wonderful conversation and a joint reflection, and I couldn't do it with better group of people. I mean, so I'm humble and honored by that. I wanted to also kind of quote my dear friend Purvi. So communication, and the good and the bad and the ugly. It's funny, I was thinking as you were saying that the same thing. So we must be sisters from another mother. In reality, I think we have to up the ante, right? So keeping with the theme is really having those conversations. Don't shy away from having conversations internally, but also externally with our suppliers. What are the challenges that you're facing, Mr. Supplier? What are the things that maybe, we are in the pain in the neck to do business with, that maybe we can partner together to make this a bit more user-friendly, ease-friendly, business-friendly on how we can collaborate together and better, right? And I think we also need to think about, right, so how do we keep attracting talent, right? So we now dealing with the challenges that our teams are to a certain extent remote, right? So we want to also make sure that as we're celebrating, connecting, and communicating internally and externally with our suppliers, we also are looking at our teams, right? Making sure that there's focus on the core skills, but also on how we can be more adaptable. And are we learning together? Are we looking at, having creative space and time to discuss, the things that went well, but the things also that didn't went well and why? And how do we then go back and revisit that with, different maybe set of lenses, and how do we are prepared to actually maybe do things differently, right? And to raise the bar. I think it couldn't be better time to be in procurement, quite honestly. I mean, we have circular procurement, we have sustainability, we have diversity and inclusion, we actually have innovation to solve for. So I'm extremely pumped and excited. And quite honestly, we also need to bring that back to our teams and to organization to not only make it cool again, but actually it is cool to be in procurement, if anything. So that's just, my moment of inspiration. So, and thank you so much.
Yes, it is. Go for it,
What I
Justin.
think I take away from this group, and I find pretty inspiring, is how much connection drives all of us, and how much value we see out of the investment into our organizations to create the sense of internal alignment and shared mission that you need to do some of the cool things that you want to do when you're connecting with suppliers. I think I just take away that every bit of time and energy that you put into that has a pretty big return. And I'm also excited about the future of procurement that looks like it's headed a little bit to more towards where higher education has been, a little bit more decentralized environment, one that cares a little bit more about environmental sustainability and social responsibility. Because as companies come in that direction too, I think you're starting to see more innovation in terms of tools and thinking, and just frankly, more excitement about what can be produced. And so, I think, I kind of started out, just to reveal how old I am, I started out like in the early days when reverse auctions were really exciting. And now all of a sudden we're at this new time where for the first time, there's a lot of excitement about, new sources of data, new technologies, new ways of doing things, real excitement for the first time in a while. And that's really refreshing.
Yes, absolutely. Connection, not at the expense of yourself, but connection that's authentic, that's helpful, that finds new opportunities. That's the magic, you guys. So thank you for letting me moderate this beautiful conversation. Procurement is the source for what lies ahead. And it's up to us to constantly reinvent ourselves. And I hope to everyone in the audience that is in procurement in some way, you have that power. So go use it. Go be authentic, go connect with the other human beings in your workplace, and go make some magic happen. So thank you for letting me moderate this beautiful conversation. And Sarah, back over to you before we sing, of course, or show off more shoes.
So Jessica, when you were closing out, it makes me think of one of my favorite hashtags of the year is making procurement cool. And so I try to use that in a lot of the posting that we do, because I think people don't realize how awesome and cool procurement is. And all of us have an opportunity to be more public about the amazing things that we do and share it with people that may not know what actually is involved with procurement and the amazing role that we all play. So I want to say thank you so much to each of the panelists. We have the Bay Area represented here pretty well. Jessica, thank you so much for moderating. You are an awesome leader and speaker, and really enjoyed the conversation. We will be sharing a copy of the recording for those that weren't able to make it today, or those of you that didn't take notes and want to go back and listen again. That will be sent via email, and we'll start sharing it on social media this week. So feel free to pass that along to all of your colleagues and friends. And then if you enjoyed the conversation today and would like to participate in our panel next month, that will be August 10th from 1 to 2:30 Eastern Time. Each month we have a different moderator and a different group of procurement leaders. So we're changing up and representing procurement around the globe from all different industries. So with that, I want to wish everyone a wonderful rest of their day and week, and we hope to see you back next month.